It's funny how sometimes the most chaotic seeming things are actually hiding this secret logic, this little spark of genius just under the surface. And today we're going to put that to the test with what sounds like a completely wild Italian children's song. I mean, on the surface, it's just nonsense. But is it? Let's break it down.
All right, so this is what we're working with. And yeah, at first glance, this is just a mess of words, right? You've got a mouse, he's under a bed, then a trip to the hospital, some cats, some goats, and my personal favorite, this sound zumpapa. What on earth is that? Right now, it feels completely and totally random.
And that really is the central question here, isn't it? What is going on? Is this just a random string of rhymes that someone threw together for kids? Or is there actually some kind of deliberate structure hiding in all that chaos? You know what? Let's treat this like a real investigation. Let's see if we can crack the code.
All right, Section 1, Anatomy of a Mouse Tail. We're calling this Unpacking a Micro-Epic. So, first step in any good investigation, you gotta isolate the pieces. Let's start by pulling out what turns out to be, and I'm not kidding, a complete, tiny little epic story. So if you go back to that big wall of text and you start pulling out just specific lines, something amazing happens. A really clear story actually starts to take shape. You find a narrative with a proper beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's all about our little hero, the mouse, Topolino. And check this out. When you lay it all out, it follows a surprisingly classic narrative structure. I mean, seriously. First, you get the transgression. Topolino, he gets under the bed where he's not supposed to be. That leads to the conflict. His mom throws a little shoe at him. Ouch. So then comes the quest for a solution. They gotta run to the hospital, then run to the pharmacy. And finally, you have the resolution. They put a little bandage on him. It's like a whole epic journey in just a few lines, hidden right there in plain sight. And this is where it gets really interesting, because it shows you just how formulaic this song is designed to be. If you listen closely, there are actually two different endings floating around. One ends with, "And here ends the fable." The other says, "And here ends the little fable." It's a tiny change, but it tells you so much. It tells you this is a kind of modular story. It's literally built to be sung over and over and over again. Okay, so we've found one whole story hidden in the chaos. But what about all those other words? The cats and the goats? Well, that brings us to our next section, which builds out a completely different scene. Welcome to the farm. Just like that, the song completely pivots. 1 minute, we're with the injured mouse, and the next, boom, we've been teleported to the old farm. And this isn't just some random tangent. This is actually a classic case of world building. The song is literally expanding its own little universe way beyond Topolino's bedroom. And of course, this new location comes with a whole new cast of characters. You get your standard farm animals, right? We've got cats, a little donkeys, some goats, pigs, dogs. But then, almost like a little surreal joke, the song just casually drops in a bear. A bear! What is a bear doing on this farm? The song never explains, which honestly just makes the whole thing even more charming and weird. And pay attention to how these characters get introduced. It's not through fancy descriptions, it's just simple, forceful repetition. Gatto, gatto, gatto. Capra, 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 capra. Now, this isn't just lazy filler. Oh no. This is a very deliberate and frankly, brilliant technique to make each animal super memorable and incredibly easy for a little kid to sing along with. All right, so we've looked at what the song is about. We've got a mouse's mini adventure and a quick tour of a very strange farm. But now let's get into the mechanics. Let's deconstruct how this thing actually works. What is its secret weapon? Okay, so the first tool in its toolbox is onomatopoeia, words that sound like the thing they're describing, like buzz or meow. But Zumpapa is such a brilliant example because it doesn't really imitate any specific sound. It's pure rhythm, pure energy. It's this fantastic little action word that injects a bouncy, fun feeling right into the middle of the story, even when our poor mouse is in trouble. And the second tool, which you can see pretty clearly here, is just relentless repetition. Corri, corri, which means run, run. That creates all this urgency in the mouse's story. And as we just saw, the repeated animal names are how we meet the characters. And again, I gotta stress, this is not lazy writing. It is a powerful, powerful memory tool that makes this song unbelievably catchy and super easy to learn. So we've broken down the story, we've met the characters, we've looked at the techniques, but let's just take a step back and ask the big question. Why does any of this even matter?
Why are we analyzing a kid's song? Because what we've really uncovered here is a secret formula for super effective communication, especially when you're talking to a young audience. Think about it. The song uses a simple, action-packed plot. It makes itself memorable with all that repetition and those fun sound effects like zimpapa. And it fills its world with a clear, if, slightly quirky, cast of characters. It's basically a masterclass in how to tell a story efficiently.
There's this one line from Topolino's story that describes his bandage. It says it's la legata stretta stretta, which means tied very, very tight. And honestly, that is the perfect metaphor for the song itself. Each of these simple little elements, the plot, the repetition, the sounds, they're all woven together to create this short but incredibly tight and effective piece of storytelling. This whole thing really just goes to show that some real complexity can be hiding in the simplest of places. And so that leaves me with one final thought for you. What are the simple songs or stories from your own childhood that might be more complex than you remember? What kind of hidden genius is just sitting there waiting for you to find it?